Oh, great. So as people are coming in, just so y'all know, we have a poll in the poll section. Hi. Oh, are you our IT person that's helping us out?
I'm your IT help. If you need anything, just send me a message. I'm just going to go off camera now.
Thank you so much. But yeah, as folks are coming in, we have a poll in the poll section. We just kind of wanted to see where people were in their conservation careers so that as we start answering questions, we can kind of get a sense of where people are at. So if you head over there, you can click on one of those, and that'll just give us a better sense of where to direct some of our questions. And we're waiting on 3 other panelists. So we'll hang out here for a little bit as people answer the poll.
And I did send them all an email, so they should know just to pop over here. Hopefully they'll be here in a moment.
All right, awesome. Yeah. Did you put up your Christmas tree already, Albert?
So Lisandro has the Snoopy Christmas tree.
Oh.
So we'll probably just do that, like a very minimalist kind of decoration.
Yeah. That's cool. We're in Arizona, and my parents just moved to this like super rural area of Arizona. So we're like, maybe we'll just get one of like the little pinitos that come out of the agaves and like decorate one of those. That might be kind of nice.
It sounds cool.
Yeah.
Take pictures.
Yeah, for sure. Oh my God, we're getting so many beautiful pictures. It's so nice out here. We're like surrounded by mountains. Very different from DC.
Hey, Mike.
Everybody, good morning.
Good morning.
Buenos dias.
I don't know if everybody else panicked, but I did the same panic. Like, all right, how do I get here? This doesn't look like the test run. I thought, so this doesn't look like the test run we did last week.
No worries. Albert and I were on the phone. We're like, all right, let's do this together. Let's get in here.
No, I did see the email though that they said just wait.
Okay, cool. Yeah, got some friends.
Looks like, yeah. And they can see us right now? They can see us and hear us already?
Welcome, everybody.
Yeah.
Hello.
Oh,
hey,
yes.
Mike, I was telling Melissa and Albert, I wore my green uniform for the occasion, so I'm sporting the Forest Service shield right now.
I debated on it. I have to say, I did debate.
Con toda la actitud.
I actually tend to wear it. I used to I had my like some days that people say don't wear it, other times people say wear it, and kids were in Chicago. Most people don't know what it is, and I've been asked if I was a zookeeper, if I work for the state, different things like that. But people say they're gonna panic if they see you. What do you get?
I get immigration out here in California. La Migra. We are La Migra colors, but we have to show them the little tree. No, it's the forest. Yeah. Oh, they're all white now, but
no, I've had that question too in the neighborhoods, and a quick explanation though, and folks are like, oh really? And they start asking a lot of questions though after that point. After we start explaining, you show them the tree and the badge and that sort of thing, and people get excited.
So we're about to hit 5 minutes. We're just missing Brenda. But in the meantime, I'd love for folks to just kind of share where they're coming from in the chat so we can kind of know where everyone is in this world during this wild time. I'll go ahead and share. I am in Hereford, Arizona, which is a super rural town. And we got folks from Puerto Rico. Hey. Shout out to Albert from Brookside Gardens, Maryland, New York.
Raquel.
Washington. Hey. Oh my goodness. Detroit. Hey. What's up? Brazil. Hey. Oh. Welcome everyone. Oh my goodness, so many good friends. Okay, well, maybe since we're already 5 minutes in, we'll get started. This initial question is just kind of an introduction anyways. So hopefully Brenda can jump in. I just sent Lou a message to see if we can get Brenda in here. So maybe let's go ahead and get started. Also, I saw in the chat, people are talking about my bird. That's my mom's little cotorrito. He's hanging out over here. We'll see if maybe he can make an intro, but it's a little wild in the mornings. Okay, so first of all, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Melissa Martinez. I use she, her pronouns. And I'm gonna be your moderator for this panel. The wonderful Lufa was the one that brought us all together. She is the Conservation Programs Director at the National Forest Service and a good friend of ours. And so she is actually doing a concurrent panel right now. So she won't be with us, but she's here in spirit and she helped put so much time and energy into that. So I just wanted to make sure to share some gratitude in her direction. And before we get started with this panel, I wanted to make sure that folks get a chance to check out the poll so that we can kind of get an idea of where people are at in their careers, because this panel is about the Latino experience in the green career field. And so to kind of start us off, I just wanted to set some intention for us and this conversation and share that this conversation is going to be focusing on our experiences, right? These folks here, these wonderful people, represent their singular experiences. As we all know, they don't represent the experience of all Latinos across the spectrum. And so this group also in particular has a very set career path. And also we wanted to just acknowledge, right, a career is kind of a privilege in the sense that we are paid to do what we do, and there are not a lot of folks that get to do what we do. So there is privilege in that, and there is privilege in that, and also that we are in much deeper community than just the folks that get to be here on this call today. There are conservationists, environmentalists in 101 different ways. So just wanted to share that. And then just highlight our intention in sharing that we're going to be talking about our personal barriers. Some of those are systemic barriers that have kept us from doing the work and continue to keep us from doing the work, but also how we've gotten past some of those barriers and continue to advance in our field, and how we break some of those barriers down and how we are doing that now. And so kind of sharing where maybe you could jump in and help out in this movement as we kind of continue to share what our visions could look like for what a green career field could look like. So all of this is super subjective, but it's going to be a really interesting conversation. We had a chance to meet before this, so I'm excited to hear folks to answer these questions. So I will go ahead and open it up with our very first question, where folks can introduce themselves. And we're going to kind of try and keep it to 3 minutes per question and maybe open it up to some questions. And we have 3 questions. And our very first one is asking our panelists here to describe their career paths and explain sort of the roadmap and some of the barriers along the way for them. So I will go ahead and pass it over to Albert to start us off.
Good morning, everyone. Buenos dias. It's great to connect with everybody virtually. He, him, his pronouns. I work, live, and play in the ancestral lands of the Piscataway Nations, also known as Washington, D.C. So my career path definitely started as someone who lived a binary life, both in the United States and in Mexico. So I lived in Brownsville, Texas, which is a border city. So my upbringing, was, playing on the beach, both in Mexico and in the US. And that's something that, really made me happy. Just like these experiences that really, made me feel so connected with myself, which at the time, it just made me feel happy. So just growing up, I just was looking back at what really made me happy. And I was like exploring my career, and kind of figuring out who I was along the way. And, I kept on jumping back and forth. And I did want to pursue a career in medicine. And it's fascinating just because it is, one of these established mainstream or, jobs that if you mention I work as a doctor, a nurse, or anywhere in the medical field, you don't necessarily have to explain yourself. So that made sense to me. And then as I was pursuing that, I just realized happiness was definitely not part of that equation. I was just like, you know what, this is so stressful. And when I was like reverting back to what really I wanted to do, I was like, well, you know what really made me happy? It was the outdoors. So I was like, you know, trying to figure out what that was. I did a lot of classes in like environmental learning. I got my degree in sociology, which really kind of helped me shape my experience. But you know, having a bachelor's is great, but you know, moving into the job market is scary as it is. And you know, as you know, this fresh student who just graduated from Texas State University, I was very naive in the sense of I'll just find a job if I move up to this saturated city in the East Coast, which is DC. You know, there's nonprofits left and right, but something that I just didn't have was the experience, the background. I had this passion, I had this love, but how can I tell people that I'd be a good person to have on staff? So, you know what, I spent a substantial amount of time just kind of figuring out, applying, and nothing necessarily happened. I had a lot of random jobs, as a lot of people normally do. I worked at a survey call center. I worked as a diet clerk. I did dog walking, house sitting. You know, it was just, you know, to pay the bills. But something that I stumbled across in my backyard was a national park, which just so happened to be Rock Creek Park. I started volunteering there, and that volunteer experience really helped me, you know, beef up a lot of the things that I was missing in my experiences, which was, you know, having somebody to vouch for me, and also having these tangible experiences that I could share with people and say, this is something that I could share with you as like a deliverable. So, you know what, like, you know, fast forward to who I am now, like, you know, I started off as a volunteer, you know, for the Park Service, and I am a volunteer manager at Brookside Gardens. And just like coming full circle, it really is like a very like, in retrospect, looking back, it doesn't seem like it was such a hard experience, but it was a lot of patience, a lot of times where I just felt like I wanted to give up. But I felt very fortunate that a lot of people that were in my corner, you know, kept on pushing me and just kept on, you know, cheering me on, and that's what I needed. So thank you. And I'm sure that was more than 3 minutes. Sorry about that.
No worries at all. I will be slyly direct messaging you on the side. No shade, just want to keep us moving. So I will go ahead and throw it to Fabian to keep.
Okay, hopefully folks can hear me. My growing up, my experience is similar to Alberto. Both of my parents grew up in Jalisco, Mexico, migrated here in their late teens, looking for better opportunities, and somehow fell into Dinuba, California, which is in Central California, big farm working community, and that's where I was born and raised. So grew up around a lot of Mexicanos, a lot of farm working colleagues. My dad worked at a turkey breeding farm pretty much his whole career until he retired not too long ago. Now he goes fishing a lot, which is great. But also grew up going back and forth to Mexico, primarily to visit familia, plant corn in the summers, you know, participate in all the fiestas in December. And so that was my experience growing up. The way I kind of fell into the U.S. Forest Service, and I'm wearing my uniform today just to kind of hold space for our communities within these agencies, which is important, is I went to UCLA right out of high school, University of California, Los Angeles, and found a degree, the major of Chicana and Chicano Studies. And so I really went in that direction. I was an econ major previous. For about 3 years, I was an econ major, double majoring with Chicana and Chicano Studies, and I finally just dropped the econ major. Didn't see myself working in finance or anything like that. Really saw myself working with my community and wanted to go back to Central California, talk to the farm working youth about this isn't everything. There's more out there, but you need to apply yourself in school. And the way I worked for the Forest Service is through networking. My younger sister at the time, I have two younger sisters, one older brother. Two younger sisters went to Fresno State, and one of them networked me with a USDA representative that was there to kind of promote diversity within USDA. And so he was a liaison that sat on campus, and he took me under his wing and started networking me. The Forest Service is under USDA, and that's where I met Jim Oftedal, who ended up becoming my mentor within the Forest Service, gave me my first job as an intern, first just kind of shadowing him and kind of exploring what he does. He runs a program out here in California for the Forest Service called Generation Green that does outreach and recruitment, starting at elementary schools into middle schools, a lot of leadership development at the high school level, and then, you know, send them off to college and bring them back as interns. So very grassroots approach from a federal agency, which really attracted me to what he was doing. And he gave me my first opportunity. Eventually, the Generation Green coordinator that sat at the local high school, pretty much at the town I grew up in, moved on, and he gave me that opportunity to sit at a local high school. Of course, I didn't wear the uniform when I was at the high school, even though I worked for the Forest Service, because it can be a bit intimidating. It's all green, and just uniforms in general for our community weren't very welcoming. So he gave me some opportunity to kind of implement some of what I had learned with my Chicano Studies degree. And luckily, there was already a good infrastructure with the Generation Green Club. So really, it was just tapping into the Spanish Club. It was tapping into the youth that were a little out of place because they had to work on the weekends or on holidays. And, you know, coming from immigrant backgrounds, it was difficult to just, you know, focus on school. So they needed something else. And we had a very good 2-year college across the street from Reedley High School in Central California, Reedley College, that had a forestry program. So as soon as a few of these young folks went away and fought fires for a summer and came back with enough money to buy a car and give their mom grocery money for the year, youth started that were working in the field started to look at, you know, academia as a possibility if they could end up in forestry. So I was very lucky to learn about the Forest Service that way. Previous to that, I had never heard of the Forest Service, even though I grew up visiting the giant sequoia forest with family. We had family in Los Angeles, in San Francisco. Of course, being from Jalisco, a small community, we all get together for anything, quinceañeras, baptisms. So we had this big network, and everybody loved coming to Dinuba because we were less than an hour drive from the giant sequoias. So in the snow time, they would come up, and so that was my experience with the Park Service, but never knew about the Forest Service until they gave me an opportunity. So from then on, I've been with the Forest Service for 15 years now, primarily in developing partnerships to expose more youth to these types of careers. What challenges did I face? I'll tell you, the agency, the Forest Service, had this program because previous to I would say 20 years ago, it was very much suffering from being a white male agency out here in California. They were hiring females equally, Hispanics equally, and so there was some legal things that happened that caused them to invest in these types of programs. And luckily, you know, here we are, and we're doing a great job. And I think we're just opening up public lands to more and more of our communities, which we've always been a part of. I failed to mention I'm coming to you from Southern California currently, but ancestral lands of the Tongva, Tataviam, and the Quiche nations. And with that, I know we've got a lot to cover, so I'll pass it on. Thank you, Melissa.
So much. We'll pass over to...
Well, good morning, everybody. Buenos días. Bon dia para la gente de Brasil. So one word, the question, you know, what's a word to describe my roadmap and barriers along the way? I'd say roundabout is the word. And so I'm Mike Rizzo. I work for the U.S. Forest Service. I'm based in Chicago, Illinois. I started out a national forest system, which means, you know, at the national forest level. I worked actually on the National Tallgrass Prairie here in Illinois. Currently, I work in the International Programs Office, where I work on connecting communities with conservation along flyways. Flyways meaning migratory routes of birds, monarch butterflies, dragonflies, and even bats. So my path, my career path for everybody, I say roundabout because I really didn't have a plan. Like Fabian, I didn't know what the Forest Service was. I knew what the county forest preserves were here in Illinois, the state forest, but never knew much about Smoky Bear. I didn't know what the national forest system was. But outdoors, you know, as a kid, I think Alberto mentioned that, you know, as a kid, I loved the outdoors, but our outdoors, you know, playing outside, the alley, local parks, the lake. I'd say the freight train tracks were our local wilderness. You know, it's a place we escaped from our parents and playing, you know, jumping on trains, playing in the vegetation. And I don't know if I'd want my kids to do that, but that's what we used to do. But I was also very fortunate. I was able to go back to Mexico, especially with my grandparents. And in those days, it was, we didn't fly. It was a 3-day drive, 3-day bus ride, you know, looking out the window and seeing the landscape change. And I was always fascinated by it. But, you know, I could still tell you the path when I was 7 years old going, and, you know, where we crossed in Laredo, and being able to see a desert as a 7, 8-year-old and a little older, it's amazing. So I knew that concept existed, but I was a city kid. What in terms of, I think Alberto mentioned, you know, I had tons of different jobs growing up. Worked in warehouses, loading trucks, unloading trucks, even a steel mill. I was a pipe cutter, you know, but I did go to university. I started as a chemistry major. I failed out miserably because of calculus. I was literally escorted to the door of the chemical department by the dean of chemistry, who said, "You will not be a chemist." You know, I remember looking up at her. But I was taking classes in anthropology and geography, which I loved. And so I became a major. And so at that point, I was talking to this professor. He was an informal mentor. Well, we formalized the relationship. So I think both Alberto and Fabian mentioned about that, the importance of talking to somebody, a mentor. So remember that, because I had this professor I struck up a relationship with, who then really helped me my career path. At that point, my world opened up. I started working down in Mexico, across the Midwest, in the Southwest US. And for grad school, I went to Arizona State. I studied anthropology. Like Fabian, I worked in Chicano studies when I was there. And through a fluke, I returned home to Chicago for some family reasons and learned about the Forest Service, sent in a resume, received a position, or I was hired for a temporary position, and I started running from there. Soon I applied for another position. I became the Heritage Program Manager on Medewan National Tallgrass Prairie. So what does that mean? I was on the recreation team, public services team, doing analysis, archaeological, anthropological analysis, but I was the only bilingual person on my unit. So I also at the same time was doing outreach in Chicago to the communities. And we're going to get into some of these questions later about how do we help the communities where we came from, which is important. But one thing I love about the Forest Service, and this, when I say roundabout, I like to do a lot of things. So besides the Heritage Program, I was also able to do this outreach, communications, public affairs, because my boss was the public affairs officer. I worked in fire. I learned about ecology, restoration, birds, trails, you name it. And but one thing I did at that point too, I took risks, really took risks, you know, proposing projects. I connecting with communities. You know, I didn't get, you know, I didn't have support and everything. But I took risks, proposed projects, and you propose 10 projects, and if I got lucky, one would be picked, and it was great. And then eventually I applied into the International Programs Office. I was doing some assignments with monarch butterfly conservation in Texas and down in Mexico, and then I got this position where now I'm really in a position where I can use resources to connect with communities. To answer the question about barriers, I think, you know, I had these barriers, and I think a lot of the folks on the line may have many of the similar ones. Uncertainties, talking, you know, I didn't know where I was going. I'm a first generation college student. I couldn't relate. You know, I had the days I call home or friends, you know, I don't know if I'm in the right place. You know, you have that bad day. Encouragement of friends, family, professors, and you need it. You know, we can't do this alone. I think another barrier for all of us is awareness of career paths. Often you find you don't know about the Forest Service, you don't know about, or natural resources in general, or if you find out about a position, it's too late, it's already filled. Back to the first generation college student, I think we all have family pressure. And when I say first generation, like my parents, my grandparents, they didn't go to college, so they didn't really relate to what I did. But we have that pressure to pursue a career that is, and I say it in quotes, that's going to make money, because the hopes of the family, you know, are on you. Business, medicine, law. And my grandfather was really upset. You know, I'm working down in Mexico. I go visit him in the town on the weekends, all kind of scruffy because I was doing field work, and he couldn't figure it out. You know, here I am in graduate school. I should have a coat and tie on in a despacho, an office. And I had to explain to him. So that's a big part of it. And then, you're studying what? Wildlife biology. It really freaks people out in the family if they can't relate. So you really got to sell those ideas to it. There's a lot of pressure. I think other barriers to Latinos and in natural resource careers are reluctance to travel. We have family responsibilities. I know I had mine. I didn't want to travel after a while. But also nervousness. Sometimes you're not comfortable in a new area, new geographical region. And I think this is a mistake the Forest Service makes at times. We'll take someone, say, out of Chicago and send them to Wyoming or Idaho if they're not used to it. It takes a lot of mentorship to prepare students, interns for that. And then land management agencies in general, like the Forest Service, positions are difficult to come by. They're very competitive, and you often have to prove. So just because you got where you want professionally doesn't mean where you're at geographically. The Forest Service, we're all over the country, 193 million acres, 75 or so national forests and grasslands. You don't always land where you want to be from, and that's a big step for a lot of folks. And then I guess a couple things before I turn it over, I guess, to Melissa to talk to Brenda. Other ones are, it's just a lack of opportunity of routes of advancement. When I locked in my first position, there were not a lot of routes of advancement there on unit. So I had to apply out and leave, and that's a route of advancement. And then finally, which I'll talk about later, is mentorship. A lot of us joining, in my case, the Forest Service, initially you lack some mentorship. And at times it's incumbent on you, it's incumbent on me to find a mentor who could provide, or mentors, plural, who could provide advice. So I'll leave it there and then wait for the next questions. Melissa, thanks everybody.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Brenda. Welcome to the session. And just kind of share the same question that I've asked Albert and Fabian, which is just hopefully, let us know in maybe 3 minutes, if that's possible, what your career path is, and explain some of those, what that roadmap looks like, and some of those barriers along the way.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks again. Sorry for the late entry, fashionably late. So I'm Brenda, and I'm an interpretive lead ranger at the Mount St. Helens National Volcanic Monument. And it's been like, it's not really a path. It feels like an overgrown trail. Like that's what the career path looks like. And there's just, everything's overgrown and you don't know where to go. And so kind of like you were saying, I don't know if you go by Michael or by Riso, but there isn't a roadmap for where to go and how to get started. And so before this, like up until this November, I was actually an intern with the Forest Service. So I just got my permanent. It's been about 5 years since I've started this road, and I've been doing seasonals, I've been doing internships, I've been doing seasonal education jobs. But you really have to it's hard, like you said. It's not even all on you, but you do have to be like a little bit flexible, and a lot of people, it takes a little bit of privilege to even get started, to be able to move, to have the money, to have the transportation, to have the car, to be able to drive to all of these places where the jobs are. So I felt pretty fortunate and supported by my parents by that. My dad, for the longest, when he heard I was in environmental studies, he thought I was a weather girl. So he finally was able to see where I live and work and kind of what I do. So even getting the recognition in my family of like, what do you even do, it has taken a while. But especially now that I've got my permanent, like I'm hoping that I can really start making some inroads there. Yeah. Oh, my pronouns are she, her, hers for today. And yeah, that's what I've got.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I think now that we kind of have an idea of where everyone's coming from, kind of how they got there a little bit, I think it'd be super great for us to switch over to kind of talking a little bit about, now that we are in these positions and we hold this privilege and power to an extent in the conservation field, how are we able to use those positions to help us bring other folks into the room, help other people get here, and create a space that's more accessible for others, and make it something that we can continue to grow. So I will go ahead and kind of reverse the order maybe and hand it back over to Brenda to get us started with that.
Yeah, sorry, could you repeat it real quick?
Yeah, sure, no problem. So, so now that you're in the position that you have, what can you do, or what are you able to do right now to help others within the Latino or within the Latino community kind of keep
definitely. Yeah, thank you. I feel like, sorry, I know what I want to say, but then I don't say it. Okay, like I feel like it's definitely almost like being in the what's it called, like the old boys club. Like you have to know somebody to teach you how to go through the system. And so I think that part of bringing in more people is like being able to guide young folks, but also older folks that are interested in these careers on how to do that process. And so I know for us, we had like for Latino Conservation Week, just being able to be in the community and jumping on what is already working. Like I think that government is a very slow moving beast, and it's very hard to grab the momentum while it's happening. And I think that what we're seeing right now is that there is a lot of push for getting us out there, because we acknowledge that there's this need and this lack. So I think that part of it is definitely making ourselves more, putting ourselves out there too, and like using the social media as like being able to reach people, but also doing the work on the ground, not just virtually, which is kind of harder this year. I think that especially in my role, I was working in community engagement and communication. So I was able to go out into schools. I know the Forest Service also, when I was working for the Forest Service, they were able to provide scholarships for people too. So it's like right off the bat, it's like that support, getting folks the finances that they need to go to school, but also like now you have that support. Like I know somebody in the Forest Service that can later help me out in my career. So it's like starting people off young as well. Sorry, that's a little scatterbrained. But yeah, thank you. I'm excited to hear what everybody else does as well.
Yeah, no, that's super helpful, and kind of provide some context in terms of kind of like knowing someone to get into the system, right? And then kind of acknowledging those barriers as we go. So I really like how you kind of put those pieces together. I guess now I'll pass it over to Michael to kind of share a little bit about his.
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit more about what do I do? And here's the bottom line. I bring in my life experiences, which continue to evolve into the agency. So in my case, in the Forest Service, different levels of the Forest Service, whether it's at the local level, the regional, national, and now the international level. You know, and I also recognize what I can control, but also what's in the future. Start strategizing. So if I can't change something now, what can I change later, and how do I change it? You know, so starting kind of at the basic level, you know, I recognize I'm a city kid from Chicago. I walk in different worlds. I was able to, you know, we're talking about visiting, my exposure to the outdoors, visiting Mexico as a child, but also I had the good fortune of working in Mexico during my 20s, you know, so living. So I had a kind of an idea what folks want and how to connect with people. I did a lot of community level work, talking, but more importantly, listening to people. Was part of my jobs before the Forest Service. So the bottom line, what do I do to have an impact in a community as we're doing outreach events or partnerships? The relationship, I know it's cliche, but the relationship is everything. And it's listening. You know, we're the Forest Service to come in and, oh, we think everybody wants this program. And it isn't what folks want. You know, why didn't anybody come to our events? Well, they didn't want to do it. It could be the day. You know, I used to tell our folks, you know, why are you scheduling this today? What do you mean? I said, this is when all the quinceañeras are, baptisms, communion, graduations, you have all the families together. You know, we're not going to get anybody at an event today. And also advising folks who don't know some of the cultural nuances. How do you design a campground, for example? These are real case studies from the Forest Service. You know, I had a call from a forest. He said, you know, the Latinos used to come out, but now they don't. Okay, what happened? Well, you know, they were grabbing the picnic tables. And I said, of course, you get there early and you grab the best spot, the shady spot, the tree, and the picnic tables, and the whole family comes out. Well, we chain the tables down now and no one comes. I said, well, you did the enforcement versus the engagement. You got to understand your community. And as part of that study, one of the district ranger at the time designed a campground for extended families, but also a little secluded area for the nuclear family, more traditional. So it's understanding nuances. So bringing in my life experiences in to help explain that to some of our staff. And then specifically in designing, you know, and more general. So say we're designing an event, outreach, and activity for the Latino community, for example. And this is something I advise not only internally to the Forest Service, but our partners locally here in Chicago. Translating a flyer and posting it on social media is not enough. You know, everyone's like, well, I translated it. Why isn't anybody coming? Well, did you have somebody welcoming folks to the event? Did you have folks interact? Did you have people interacting with them and, you know, talking to them in their language? And then this is the key, I think, also is sometimes we all forget this. Was there follow-up? That's the important thing. Is there follow-up? Because you have to follow up post-event. Was this what people wanted? How can we adapt it? So these are things I bring in. Some of the other things, recruitment. Spend a lot of time explaining about what positions, the hiring process, which I have to learn. It changes. The federal government's difficult. And so that's difficult. And I'll be very honest. I've brought 25 young adults into a room, handing in their resumes, and then they're not hired. And it isn't the Forest Service fault. It's my fault when I go back to the community. And I have to be able to explain why. A big part, though, of recruitment for me is also talking to parents. It isn't just talking to a college student. Hey, apply in here. Here's the internship route. And talking to the parents, reassuring them. Hey, if we send your son, your daughter to Alaska or to Michigan or even working here in Chicago, this is all right. Here's my personal phone number. Call me at any hour of the day or night. And that is key. That's been key to my success with the relationship building, because it's mentorship. It's key. It's not 9-to-5 mentorship. And so that's the other part. Sharing my experiences, successes, my failures, my career paths, listening. And you sometimes I've had folks in the Forest Service say, what's the secret to success with community outreach? See the bird, I hope he agrees with me.
Yeah.
Successes.
Michael, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. We're gonna have to
start
to wrap it up. My heart is breaking. We have 3 minutes left to give Fabian and Albert a second. So I'll let you all go ahead and answer that question. Fabian, you can go next. And then we're gonna get a little creative. I'm gonna see if this works. I'd love for folks to help out. But I'm gonna post the last question in the chat and kind of see if folks can answer that one. I'd love for Michael, Brenda, Albert, and Fabian to answer it in the chat as well, because we did want to make sure to touch on that. I'll go ahead and pass it over to Fabian and throw.
Yeah, I know we only got a couple minutes, but I'll be brief. But I did want to kind of relate it back to Generation Green and what I learned there. For me, it's about, like Brenda said, a lot of times it comes down to who you know. So it's important for us to create and hold space within these environmental movements that in the past haven't necessarily included us directly. And by just creating and holding that space, you know, I can't tell you how many times I've been so frustrated with the Forest Service that I'm like this close to saying, let me go look for another job. But I've had so many students come through the program where I've been able to help them with the application, introduce them to the agency, or mentor the person that introduced the next generation to the agency. So it's kind of like this communal responsibility that I think it's kind of taken. But I'll leave you with this. The three program components of Generation Green are community, education, and employment. And if you have those combination of those three and hold space, you can go a lot within our communities, or you can go far. Alberto? Or Albert, sorry.
Either or is fine. Briefly, I think, yes, I acknowledge and I recognize that, you know, volunteering is a privilege. And I think that's something that just resonates all over, you know, the states. But something that Michael had mentioned is like, you know, taking risk. And that's something that I definitely try to bring in within our organization. Is just like, you know what, if the election taught us anything, one of the main things is that Latinos are not a block. They vote differently. So when people say, oh, this is what Latinos want, no, you're never gonna get anybody in that front. So if anything, it provides evidence to support that. It's just like, you know what, these, you know, approaches have to be, you know, catered. Just like you cater them to everybody else, they should be catered to us as well.
Thank you so much, Albert. And one more big thank you to everyone here on the panel. This was only 40 short minutes, but I would definitely love for folks to keep staying connected throughout the conference. a million thank yous to Naturally Latinos for bringing this all together, Audubon Naturalist Society, and all the people that came together to make this happen. So much appreciation for everyone here, and we'll keep seeing you all throughout the conference. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you so much for moderating at the very top of the session. Please go ahead and give us your feedback. And thank you so much for all the panelists and for the sponsors as well.
Thanks for facilitating, Melissa.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. See you all around. Bye.
We'll see everybody at that Forest Service booth too, or some of the other booths. But Melissa, we should have doubled the time on this.
For real. So much.
We're all passionate about this topic.
Partially responsible because I let everybody just like, I mean, I broke the 3-minute rule, and then it just kind of spiraled from there. But it was fun. I was just chatting with Melissa on the side. It's just like, you know what? It's people are spitting knowledge like right now. Like everybody's like Brenda, I definitely resonate with what you were saying. I'm like, you know, it's an overgrown path, and like, you know, sometimes you just don't know where to walk. So sometimes you just have to create your own trail, which is
it's not LNC, but it works for careers.
Yeah, and in public lands it's not advised, but for careers.
For
Well,
sure.
you know, I'm sorry.
I'm gonna have to go back and like watch y'all's recording just for the first part. I want to hear that knowledge.
I was talking to someone, more of a senior member of the Forest Service. Senior meaning he's getting ready to retire. He knows Fabian. It's a gentleman named Jim Chu who works with migratory species. And we were talking about that. That's a huge barrier, and I didn't get into that, is hiring. You know, like, oh, well, they're not qualified. And so my long-term approach is, how do we get folks to be qualified? You know, so it's a longer term, but I have to, and then they can't use that argument against us. All right, well, now they have these qualifications. So it's preparing folks who are in college now. All right, now we could position them to be where they can't be shut out because, oh, you don't have the experience, you don't have the background. And it's not immediate, but it's one way of fomenting change, and that's something that's a big barrier in the Forest Service.
I think it's even like deeper than that, because the thing, like, depending on how you get in, even you can be the most qualified, but there will always be people above you that have to be seen first before you can be looked at all. So yeah, I feel like the system, you don't see people face to face. Like it's just like a mass application and like luck. Like I think most people like think it's just luck at this point, because even if you have like 20 years experience under your belt, it's really hard.
No, agreed. But it's incumbent on us to introduce like Brenda or Alberto or Melissa to others. So, you know, when you put that faceless resume in a pool, so I think I met her. I remember her from here. And I don't have all the answers. And I think Fabian, I know that exact feeling, like you're like, I had enough. And then you think you have enough, and then something else like drives you. And there's no easy, it's slow. I mean, we're a federal government, we're not a nonprofit, so there's a lot of rules and regulations, and so we're doing best, mentoring people and prepping them to be able to be in these positions and advising them on more of that strategy, thinking the long-term approach. And when I was 20, I had no plans in life. I didn't think I had plans when I was 30. When I joined the Forest Service, I think I'll do this for a year and do something else. But yeah, that's how we're trying to approach it.
Yeah, a lot of the frustration was just not seeing some of my interns getting permanent positions, and I'm like, I'm bringing you the quality candidates, and you're not hiring them. So, but at the end of the day, I saw them going and working for other companies and making careers, but they still had this foundation in environmental. So, I think, are we going into the next session here?
I think we might have just gone over.
We're all wrapped up. I apologize I tried to share this earlier as we were wrapping up right at noon, and for some reason it didn't do it, but I was practicing while you were all speaking, and now it's working. So we can wrap up and head out of the session.
Thanks.
On to your next thing.
Brenda, are you still with the Forest Service or no?
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, I just started my permanent this past month.
Nice, nice.
We can help. Let us know.
Yeah, definitely reach out.
Thank you. It's so good to meet y'all.
Fabian, same exact frustration. The regional office say, you know, we have SCEP positions, and then they wouldn't hire anybody. And then you look bad in the community. You brought all these people here. We have jobs, and you hand them the flashy. We are the Forest Service, the hiring initiatives, and then no one's hired. And I mean, I hoped it's changed. I'm not as much in recruitment, but Alberto, sorry.
So real quickly, because I know I have 3 folks from the Forest Service, and you've probably are masters at USA Jobs. You know, how would you give advice on how to navigate USA Jobs for people listening? Because, you know, like you could be, you know, this fabulous individual, but if you don't put pen to paper, it's difficult to get these like analytics to pull your resume. So I just put in the chat, like, if there's like a 101 session on how to navigate USA Jobs, find it. But you all, the 3 of you all, have done it already. So maybe you have recommendations for folks that are still on.
Yeah, this is like not the time for imposter syndrome. You have to, like, any little thing that you can make you the expert, you gotta put that you're the expert. Even if you just taught it to someone once, you're the expert now. And the other thing too is that you kind of, like, they're not allowed to make guesses on what your work is. So you have to explain what you do, kind of like you're talking to a 12-year-old, and basically use everything that they have at their, write your resume to sound like, I'm an expert in listening to people because, or, you know, like, but, and like, basically that's not even a question, but like use one of their questions and tailor your resume exactly to the position. Because that'll help. If you put you're an expert in everything, you got to be able to back it up, basically. And so it's going to be a really, really, really long resume. I think mine is 7 or 8 pages long. Yeah, I think that's all I've got. I'm trying to keep it short.
I would add in, and sorry, Fabian, I hope I didn't cut you off. No, I agree. It's not the time for imposter syndrome. Sell yourself. I still, I mean, that's, you know, like, what? It's an odd thing to be able, you know, you're patting yourself on the back, but to get pulled as a candidate, so don't have imposter syndrome. Number 2, read everything carefully. You check one thing wrong, you may not get pulled. They just shut you out. And the other thing, it's not a 1-page resume for USA Jobs. You write as much as experience as you have in there to support the position that you're going for. You could have that thing. There's a lot of spaces. I haven't done it in a while, but there's a lot of spaces in there. Add it all in there. Give as many details as possible so that someone hiring, one, they know what you're doing, but if they want to justify you over another candidate that has quote unquote more experience, you have everything detailed there, all the bullet points. I did this, I have the history here, I have the education, I volunteered. That's the best advice I can give. It's competitive, and because it's an online system, this is my last point with it, you can get hundreds of people applying for the same position. I've interviewed in the past, you know, like, I applied for what? You know, people just go across and apply for everything at USA Jobs, and you're competing against people like, I applied to work with kids. I'm like, yeah, this is an education job. Oh no, I don't want it. And so you gotta, it's difficult. It is difficult, but follow Brenda's advice. I think you have probably the most recent into USA Jobs.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. USA Jobs, in and of itself, yeah, be real careful and make sure that you read everything and all the required attachments. But even more importantly, like Michael said, there's going to be hundreds of applicants sometimes. They just randomly check boxes. If you want to kind of stand out, go introduce yourself to that office, volunteer with that office, you know, do work with nonprofits that work with that particular office, because if that pops up on your resume, it's going to be oh, they kind of know our landscape already and some of the work that we're doing. I wonder what else, you know, we can learn about this person. And so maybe that'll prompt them to invite you in for an interview for more information. Because I think it does come back to, you know, who's familiar with the work, who can help us get some of this local work done, hit the ground running, and being able to see Albert, you know, Arevalo on a resume, and then say, oh, I think he volunteered with us a few times, really goes a long way.
Yeah, it does. And that's incumbent, like Fabian is 15 years in, I have almost 20, is introducing folks from the community. There are some folks on the chat I know, like Raquel. He introduced her. She got hired, and now she works for the County Forest Preserve System and others. And for what I do in terms of mentorship, I call not just new college students, but I call folks kind of getting more towards mid-career. How are you doing? How are you doing? How are you navigating this? And the complaints that I had when I was 20, that I had when I was 30, when I was 40, they have. And so I could help guide them. And but the introductions are key. Putting a face to a resume it's not always possible, but it's important.
And then the other thing is resource assistance. Look for those types of opportunities. Hola.
Hi. I just wanted to tell you all that your panel is 10 minutes over. And
we've closed out. We've just been kind of like chatting. But
so
I am going to jump over to the round table.
I wanted to let you all know that the round tables are starting now, and the 29 people who are still here, you are welcome to stay and keep chatting, but I wanted to let everybody know that round tables are starting now. And if you want to join, you can interact with those as well as an attendee, even if you're not a panelist. So thank you all so much, panelists.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Bye.
Head right over.
Thank
all right.
you.
See you later.